Today is Metzia Yom Tov of Pesach, so we're going to learn the two blot that were the blätter that we learned on the first day of Shvi Pesach and then on Achad Pesach today. Yesterday on Erev Yom Tov, we got up to 8 lines from the top and Daf Samach Aleph Amud. The Gemara had just finished teaching us how we know Sai by a Malva and Sai by a Loiva. There's ribis for kesef, ribis for oichel, and there's neshech for kesef and neshech for oichel. And where do we know it from? We know it from the loiva. The pasuk says leisashech lochicha neshech kesef, neshech oichel, neshech kol dover asher yishach. And from there we learn that there's neshech and ribis by kesef and oichel for the loiva, and we learn through Gzera Shava that whatever is osir for the loiva is osir for the malva. We also learn another thing from this Gzera Shava, that Neshech Kol Dover Asher Yishach, Sai, if it's not Kesef, and it's not Oichel, there's still a Nisser Ribis. Zok to Gemara. Zok to Gemara. Ravina had another approach. Ravina says, Loi Neshech Bo'oichel, V'loi Ribis B'Kesef Tzrichi Kol. I don't need Psukim and Limudim and Gzera Shavas to learn that there's neshech bo'oichel and ribis by kesef, because in the pasuk of Malva, it's muchach from the reading of the pasuk itself that ribis and neshech apply equally to oichel and kesef. Why? Because what does the pasuk say? It says in the pasuk es kas b'cha loy sitin loy b'neshech. So first it talks about the product, and then it talks about the iser neshech. The second half says uvamarbis loy sitin achlecha, which is expressed the opposite way. Talking about the Isser, then it talks about the product. So it's not parallel. So Zok to Gemara, I ksiv es kasper lo sitin leben neshach v'yachlecha b'marbis, that would be parallel. Kidika amrit. Then it would be like you said. Is this for groceries? Okay. For pizza equals it. Zok to Gemara to the garment. Hashta the ksiv es kasbecha loisita leben neshach uva marbis loisita nachlecha. So it keeps the word neshach and marbis together. Kribe hachi es kasbecha loisita leben neshach uva marbis. So the kab is after the marbis, including sign neshach and marbis for kesef. But then you could put the kama before the neshach, and then you have uva neshach uva marbis loisita nachlecha, which shows that neshach and marbis applies equally to oil. So you see Munei from the pasuk that they both apply. You don't need the Gzera Shava. Frank the Gemara, that's very nice. Ravina's a pshat, but it contradicts the Brisa. Tana nemar kam. The Tana actually uses a Gzera Shava for it. If we wouldn't have been able to learn it from the Etzem pasuk like Ravina taught us, then I would have had to rely on the Gzera Shava. But achshav shenemar kra Gzera Shava leitzara. Frank the Gemara. So if you don't need the Gzera Shava, Lamaisa there is a Gzera Shava from the loiva to the malva. The Gzera Shava lamali. What am I going to learn? What am I going to teach from the loiva to the malva through the Gzera Shava if I already know neshach and ribis apply to both oichel and kesef? There's another thing that the Torah teaches us by loiva. That is, ribis applies to anything, even if it's not oichel, even if it's not kesef. And that lekasav b'milva, there we don't have a diik from the pasuk by the malva, and therefore we need the Gzera Shava to teach us that. Now the Gemara goes on to a different topic. The Gemara discusses there's 3 averis where you're taking money away from somebody when you shouldn't have. Gzela, ribis, and they know. So the Gemara is going to want to know, why did the Torah need to place a lav for each one of these isurim? Once we know one, we know that it's also to take money from somebody when you're not supposed to. So why do we need the 3 lav? Amarava, normally the cause of Rachmana lav beribis, lav begezel, and lav b'nei. Zokmar trichi, the cause of Rachmana lav beribis. Let's say the Torah only told us that it's also to take ribis. I wouldn't have said it's because you're making somebody lose money improperly. You know why? Because the loiva is also also to give the ribis. The loiva is not taking money from somebody. So if the Torah made an isser on the loiva as well, it must be that this has nothing to do with taking away money from somebody. It must be a special chiddush of ribis. Even the loiva has an isser. So therefore, from the isser of taking ribis, we would not know that it's also it's not to take away money from somebody. We wouldn't know Gzela and we wouldn't know I know. Because we're going to laugh by Gezel, and if the Torah only told us that there's an issue by Gezel, I would have said Mishum de Bal Korche. No way it's also because you're taking away money from somebody against his will. Aval I know, but I know the person wants to pay. He doesn't realize he's being ripped off, so he wants to pay the money that he's paying. A maloi, maybe that wouldn't be also. So that's why you need I know. Because we're going to laugh by know, and if the Torah only told us Isser I know, I would have said Mishum de Yoda the Machal. You know why by know there's an Isser? Because he doesn't even realize that he's being taken advantage of. So he can't be Michael. But maybe by Gzelil, he'll be Michael because he knows that he's being stolen from. So it would be impossible to learn all three lavin from just one of these three. But maybe maybe we could learn one from two of the remaining ones. So which one should we learn from the other two? Let's say the Torah should not have written the law by Ribis, and we would learn it from Noah and Gzela. If Noah and Gzela are Aser, Ribis is Aser as well. Not necessarily. By Noah and by Gzela, I'm taking the money away without the agreement of the victim. The Levin wants to pay the interest. He wants the loan. He wants the loan under these terms. So therefore, you need definitely a pasuk by Ribis. So maybe we could learn it from Gzela and Ribis. That wouldn't work either because I would ask Malahanach Shekain Ein Derech Mekach Memkar. Gzela and Ribis is not purchasing a product. But I know that's how things work. You want something badly, you'll pay more than it's worth. Maybe he shouldn't have had a Isra Gzela. I could have learned it from my non-Ribis. The Mapachas, what are you going to ask? Why you can't learn it? Mala Ribis Ribis is a Chiddush, so I can't learn it. Gzela from it. I know is not a Chiddush, and it's still awesome. You might ask, Mala Ino Shekain Lo Yada Umachil. He doesn't know to be Michael. He doesn't know that he's overpaying. Ribis Tachiach, where he knows what he's paying. So each kasha that you would ask is neutralized by the partner. I know is unique, and Ribis is unique. But they do share one characteristic, which is why there's an Isra because you're hurting somebody, you're taking money away from him improperly. So too, it should be obvious there's an Isra Gezel as well. It's true. We taka don't need the law by Gezel. So so why is it that there's a law that outlaws Gezel if I would know the Isra Gezel anyway? So I needed to tell me that there's an Israelite sigzal if you withhold the wages of a worker. Frankly, why would I need a law for that? There already is a law specifically for that. It says in the pasuk, you're not allowed to withhold their wages. So why do I need a second law of Gzela? There should be two lavin. Frank Gemara once you should say there's two lavin. To apply to apply to Noah, apply to Ribis, and make two lavin. But look, when Ribis for Noah, a lav or a lav b'shnei lavin. So Gemara, the pasuk of Loisashok is in the same pasuk of Loisigzol. So if we're going to say that the Isser Loisigzol is applying to a lav other than actual Gzela, it makes sense to apply to what the pasuk is talking about. The pasuk reads Loisashok Sechir Ani ve'avyoid Meyachecha Amigecha. No, this is not the pasuk. There's a different pasuk in Vayikra that says Loisigzol and Loisashok Sechir in the same pasuk, and that's why we apply the extra lav to Loisashok. The extra lav of Gzela applies to Loisashok. We are going to learn the extra lav and apply it to something that's within the actual inyan where the lav is written. And let's turn on to Daf Samach Aleph Amud Beis. Uvinyano de Schir Ksiv, and in the inyan of Schir it says, Loy signoivu. Says loy signoivu. Veloy sechashenu. Veloy sechakru ish b'misay. So there, it's. I'm sorry. Sorry, I made a mistake. Uvinyana descriptive period. The pasuk says le'sashik le'sigzoil in the same pasuk, and that's why we say the le'sigzoil, which is an extra lav, applies to le'sashik. Now the Gemara has another shayla. Lo'signoivu the kosav rachman alone. It says in there lo'signoivu le'sachashu le'sachachshu is parisai. So lo'signoivu, we already know it's also to take money from somebody else. We know it from oinoah and ribis, just like we know gzela, we know gneva. Zok Gemara. You know why we needed a special law of loisig noivu? To tell us that even when you're not taking money away from somebody. What does that mean? Even if you have no intention of taking money away from somebody, you're just trying to chepe him and bother him. But if rather you have full intention of giving the money right back, that's still offered as an Isra law. Or what if someone is poor and you want to give them a gift of $1,000? So what you figure is he won't take the gift, but if I steal from him $1,000 and I'm caught, then I'll have to pay him kefil. So it's a good way for me to give somebody $1,000, and he won't even chap that he's getting it as a gift. To the contrary, he'll think I'm a ganef. That's not allowed, even though your intention is good. Loisig Noivu says that that's an iser lav. Amar Rabbi Eimer Rabashi, lav the kotzav rachmana b'mishkola Islam. There's a pasuk that says that you're not allowed to have lisasu obel b'mishpat b'mida b'mishkol u'v'amasoyer. So you're not allowed to have false weights. There's a lot. That's also gzela. It's speaking not when you have a false weight. It even includes if you have a properly weighted weight, but you keep it buried in salt and some of the salt kernels adhere to the weight. So now it weighs more. So if you use your weight to buy from somebody, you're actually going to get more than you're paying for. It's a high new gezel malya. That's just a way of stealing. We know already that's usher. So why do I need a special law for the weights? So the Gemara, lav or love mishas asiyo, to tell us that there's an isher lav not just to steal with that weight, even to possess such a weight is a lav as well. Tan Rabbanan leisasu obel b'mishpat b'mida b'mishkol u'b'masur. Zok to Gemara. Zok to heilige Gemara. B'mida zu, what is b'mida? L'sasu oval b'mida. Zu modidas karka. You have to be very honest when you're measuring property. Let's say two people have to split a property and they each need to get the same amount of property. You should not use the same rope and measure one piece of land in the summer and one in the winter, because in the winter where the rope is moist, it stretches a little bit. And when you use that rope to measure a piece of property, you're actually going to be giving him more property than you would be in the summer. So if you try to split a property, you measure for one in the winter, one in the summer, it's not going to be split evenly. But Mishkal, what is that telling us? Shloyat ben Mishkaloy Melech, like we learned. Uva Mesaira is Shaloyar Siach. When you pour, let's say you're selling wine or oil or some other liquid to somebody, you shouldn't pour it in very quickly, and then when you pour it in very quickly, the water level goes up a little bit until it settles down. So if you sell it right then when it's full and that's how you measure it, you're going to be taking away, you're going to be under measuring and giving them less than the full measure that they bought. Frank Gemara about Leidvarim Kalvachay. It's a passion to Kalvachay. Umam Misoira. See Echad Mishloishim Vishesh. In it, a Misoira is a type of volume measurements. If you're going to pour it in quickly, how much are you going to lose? You're going to lose very little because the whole thing is only 1/36 of a loik. The whole Masar is a small measurement. So when you're pouring it this way, the amount that you're underselling it by is minimal. Still, Hikbidol of Torah, the Torah was makrid that even that little tiny amount, you should not take advantage of your customer. Kavachomer, if you're dealing with a much larger measurement, like a hin, or a chatzihin, or a shlishizhin, or a vizhin, or a loig, or a chatzi loig, or a vizh loig, which are much bigger measurements. So when you do that same process of dumping it in quickly, the amount that it swells while it's still active is a lot more than the tiny little bit of amount that would be by the Messiah. So kol shegei that would be aser. Amarava, Lamali the Kosa Rachmana Yetias Mitzrayim Beribis. So now we're getting into we're analyzing these Isurim, so we're analyzing how the Pasuk presents these Isurim. The Torah says by Ribis, you shouldn't take Ribis because I am Hashem who took you out of Eretz Mitzrayim. What does Mitzrayim have anything to do with Ribis? Gabay Tzitzis. By Tzitzis as well. Yitzis Mitzrayim, or Yitzis Mitzrayim Gabay Tzitzis, and Yitzis Mitzrayim by Mishkolos, and by the Isser of false words. Zok the Gemara, Amar Kodesh Baruch Hu, Anihu, Shevchanti b'Mitzrayim, B'tiba shal B'chor, L'tiba shal Ein shal B'chor. By Makas B'chor, the Rebbe knew who was a B'chor and who wasn't. Even though it might not have been known that someone's a B'chor, Kodesh Baruch Hu was able to identify who's a B'chor. So don't try to play games with these Yisurim. Anihu she'asad li'fara, Mimisha toile ba'oisav b'nochri, umal ba'oisav li'Yisrael b'ribis. Some people want to blend b'ribis, but they don't want people to be screaming at them that they're malva b'ribis. So what they'll say is, this isn't really my money. I'm just working for a guy and I'm lending money on his behalf. When really he is a villain because he's lending out his own money b'ribis. So Hashem knows who you are. You can't fool Hashem. Or umisha toyin mishkaloisav b'melach. Somebody who soaks toyin mishkaloisav, he soaks his weight in salt, so again they become heavier. I know about it. Maybe nobody else will notice, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows. Or someone who, instead of using tcheles, which is very expensive, he used kala ilam, which is a color that looks like tcheles, but it's not tcheles. It's not made from the chalazon. HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows the difference, and you can't fool HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's why he says, "Ani Hashem Elokim Asher Seisi Eschem Eretz Mitzrayim." Ravina Iklo L'Sur de Pras. Ravina came to a city called Surah de Pras. And Rashi says this isn't the regular Surah that we learned about. It's a different Surah that was on the riverbanks of the Pras River. And what happened was, Omer Le Rab Chanina Misura de Pras Ravina. Rab Chanina asked Ravina the following question. Yitzias Mitzrayim the cause of Achmona Gabi Shrotzim Lam. It says Yitzias Mitzrayim by the Isser of Shrotzim as well. Why is it there? Omer Le, same thing we said until now. I knew which child in Mitzrayim was a Bechor and which not. And he also the far Mishum Arab Kivrei Dagim Tameim but Kivrei Dagim Torah in the Merchel Yisrael. If someone mixes the insides of Tamei fish with kosher fish and he sells them off to a Yid as if they're kosher fish, I can tell. So you can't fool me. Zok to Gemara, Amar Le, Rabchinin told Ravina, that's not what I was looking for. Amar Le, Anoha Maila Kakosha. It doesn't just say, I'm Hashem who took you out of Mitzrayim. It says, Ani Hashem Hama'ala, who lifted you up, who raised you up of Mitzrayim. Why is there this interesting expression of Hamaila Eschem Eretz Mitzrayim? Zok to Gemara, Amar Le, Ravina answered, L'chedetana Devei Rabbi Shmuel, to teach us what the limud that Devei Rabbi Shmuel learned. Tana Devei Rabbi Shmuel, Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Ilmale Halesi Es Yisrael Mitzrayim, Ela B'Shvil Davar Zeh. The only reason why I took Lali out of Mitzrayim, even if I didn't give him any mitzvahs, except for this one mitzvah, She'ein Mitamin B'Shrotzin, that they shouldn't be Mitamin themselves with my Cholos Esurais, Dayoy, that would have been enough. So Hamal Hashem lifted us out of the Shemutz by making us be purish from my Cholos Esurais. That infuses ourselves with such a kedusha. For that alone, Dr. Boishleim, it would have been worth to take us out of a tribe. Frankly, more, is it such a big affair? It's different than any of the other affairs we're discussing. Is there a bigger schar oinish for shrotzim, which is a regular lab, than there is for these other halachas, ribis, tzitzis, and mishkolos? Amalei, avagav nofesh igrayu. Even though the schar and oinish is the same, it's very moist to eat. And Rabbi Loi touched it tonight by his drasha, by the Nilas Achag, because it goes into a person, the Macholos Asuras go into a person, and they're metamtim their lave and brings them to do Averis. It changes their personality from Toiv L'Ra. Zok the Heilige Gemara Viter. Vezeu Tarbis Hamar Beperis. This is going to be a little bit of a interesting sugya, a little bit of a challenging sugya. So let's see the Gemara. The Mishnah talks about what's tarbis. what's the Isser Tarbis, and it talks about the Marba Beperis. Frank the Gemara, how about the first case? Otu kol hanidar minyan adhashta lav ribisu. Of course, it was ribis. Ribis applies equally to oichel and pears, and the first case of the Mishnah is both ribis and neshach. So why is the Mishnah now introducing a drabanan when we're discussing tarbis? Rabavo, this is what it means. At kan shel Torah. Up until now, the Mishnah was discussing the Isur Deraisa of ribis. Ikan velech, but here from here on, when we're talking about Paris shel devrayim, we're speaking about ribis that's only osur midrabanan. V'chein amarava at kan shel Torah mikan velech shel devrayim. At kan, up until this point, when we're talking about the deraisa, yochin rosha v'ilbas tzadik. The Rasha will prepare all this money. He'll receive money through Isser, like ribis, but he won't benefit from it. When he dies, his children, who might be tzaddikim, are going to benefit from it. Are you suggesting by ribis deraisa the children are going to benefit from it, but by ribis derabanan not? No. Even what we learned until now in the Mishnah, which was ribis deraisa, even there we say that the child doesn't have to give it back. The child can keep it and benefit from it. Atkan ribis ktsutza, the first case in the Mishnah was speaking about ribis ktsutza, which is deraisa. And ktsutza means it was in the contract of our loan, where you'll be mechuyev to pay me back extra than the money that I lent you. The kan veilach avak ribis. But the second case of the Mishnah is only derabanan, that's avak ribis. Amar Rabbi Lozer. So until now, we seem to see that the child doesn't have to pay it back. But by ribis ktsutza, by ribis deraisa, does the malva have to give it back? So Amar Rabbi Lozer, ribis ktsutza yoytze b'dayon. In fact, the malva has to give it back. And if the loiva takes the malva to Bezdin, Bezdin will force the malva to pay it back. But avak ribis, if it's only ribis derabanan, eino yoytze b'dayonim, there the malva does not have to pay back the ribis. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, I feel a ribis ktsutza nami eino yoytze b'dayonim. Rabbi Yochanan knows even if someone takes ribis deraisa, he doesn't have to return the ribis. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, my time with Rabbi Yochanan. Where does Rabbi Yochanan know this from? The Amar Kral ben Neshach Nosan. This is a pasuk in Yecheskel. Ben Neshach Nosan. We're talking about somebody who lent out money for ribis, for Neshach. V'tarbis lokach. He took tarbis. V'choyin. You think he's going to live? Lo yichya. This man will not live because of his averis. As kol ha'to'evos ha'ela also. He did all these to'evos. So we're saying lo yichya, he's not going to live. L'misa nitein v'lo l'ishav. What is the consequence of somebody taking ribis? He's going to die. But it doesn't say anywhere that he has to pay it back. It says, Al tikach me'ita neshech v'tarbis v'yoreisim alekecha. L'moyeritim. There's an issue to do it. You have to have your shemayim and not take ribis. But it doesn't say anywhere you got to give it back. Rava Amar megufe dekra shmiyale. We learn it from the pasuk in Yecheskel, because the pasuk in Yecheskel continues and says, "Moish yumos dam of boyiyah." He will die and his blood will be on him. So we're comparing hukshu mal ribis l'shoich v'damav. L'shoich v'damav. We're comparing someone who takes ribis to someone who's shoich v'damav. Ma shoich v'damim l'nitnu l'ishav. Just like by shvichas damim, you can't pay that back. Ach malva ribis l'nitnu l'ishav, and so too by malva ribis you don't pay back. So that's the porch of Yochanan. And Amar Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak Matamid Rabbi Lozer. Rabbi Lozer says you do have to pay back ribis ktsutza. He has a different pasuk. The Amar Kro, the pasuk says. And now we're going to turn on to Samach Beis Amar Aleph, which is today's daf. At the end of the pasuk that talks about ribis, al tigach meita neshech v'sarbis v'yireishim alakecha, l'chai achicha imach. Ahadurla, you have to return the ribis ki heichi denichi, so he should be able to live. Rabbi Yochanan, what Rabbi Yochanan do with the l'chai achicha imach? Chazil, you don't have to give it back. Hi v'chai achicha imach my overlay. So can we buy the Tanya to a new halacha that we learned in the Brisa? There are two people walking through the desert, and they're parched and they need water. Only one of the two has a jug of water, that will be enough to sustain him himself to get to a place where they can get more water. But if they share it, neither one will survive. They'll both die because there won't be enough water to sustain both of them until they get out of this desert. If they both drink, if they both drink Mason, they'll die. But if only one of the people drink, Magia Liishiv, he'll be able to at least get to civilization and be able to find more water. So Zok Gemara, Darsh ben Petura Darshan. Mutav sheyishtu shneim v'yamusu. It's better that they should share the water, even though they're both going to die of thirst. Val yira echad mehen b'misasa shel chaveiro. And one of them shouldn't chas v'sholom see that the other friend dies because he didn't have water. That's what Ben Petura Darshan. Achad bar Rabbi Kiva. Until Rabbi Kiva came with something more practical. V'limed nitaras v'chaya chicha imach. Your friend should live with you, but you're first. Chayecha koidim v'chaya chaverecha. You should drink the water. Metzia afraid to Gemara. Now the Gemara is going to bring rayas regarding the shaila of whether or not Ribis Tzutza Joseph and Yonim Machlekes of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Kiva. What if you saw him yarshin from their father money that the father received through ribs? Even though they know this money was ribis money, nevertheless, they don't have to give it back. It's mashma that they don't have to give it back, but their father, when he was alive, did have to give it back. So this is a right to Rabbi Eliezer against Rabbi Yochanan. So Gemara, no, that's not a good deal. Really, the father wouldn't have had to give it back. So why does the Bryce only talk about the children not giving back? The Bryce should talk about even the bigger chiddush that the culprit, the malva, does not give it back. So Gemara, because we want to discuss the children for a different reason. Because since the Sefer talks about where even the children have to give it back, because it says the father left them over something. That it's very obvious to everybody, and it's easily identifiable that this is what the father left them. And the father received this through a bad way, then they have to give it back. So there it's saying a chiddush that even the children have to give this back. Because otherwise everyone's going to be saying, oh, that cow that these kids have, the father stole it. It'll bring bizoyin to the father. So once we're addressing the children, Tananami Reisha b'ditu. That's why the Reisha says that they don't have to give it back. But about the father doesn't either have to give it back. Frankly, I don't understand. If it's identifiable and their father was a villain, he had no right to take it, why should they give it back? Should they be mechuyev to give it back to clean up their father's name? Don't we have a pasuk that says you're only supposed to protect people who do the mitzvahs and ma'asim tovim, but if they're not you don't have to worry about the bezoyin. So why do these children need to be worried about the bezoyin of their father who was a rasha? So the Gemara Kedamar Pichas which the Rava b'shas tshuva. Pichas, the name of Rava said they could be speaking where the father did tshuva. Chanami b'shas tshuva. This case could be speaking where he did tshuva, and that's why they have to clean up his name. Frank the Gemara, what do you mean he did tshuva? He also tshuva, my boy Gabay. How is it that the money was still by him? If he did tshuva, he should have returned it already. Gemara Shalahizbek lahachshat shemeis. Maybe he just didn't have a chance to return the money before he died. But he still did tshuva, so you have to protect his name. Metzia effect Gemara. Hagazlonim umali ribis. Even though they collected this money, the Isser, they have to give it back. What does it mean, the Gazlanim, even though they took it already? They didn't take it, they're not a Gazlan yet. They didn't steal it yet. How can you call them Gazlanim? A Gazlan, what type of Gazlan? A Gazlan who was a Malva Baribis, even though they collected Machzirin. So this says black and white that the Malva Baribis have to pay back. It's right, Rabbi Eliezer. It's a shver kind of Rabbi. So Gemara Inachanami Tanoi Rabbi Yochanan doesn't hold like this Tana. He has another Tana who holds that you don't have to give it back. The Tanya Rabbi Nechemia Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Poitrin es Malva es Orev. He ponders them from paying back. Because there's a law of it, therefore, pointing is a malva that's ordered from Malchus. Because it's a law of it to pay back. Frankly, more my kumase, where is there a mitzvah to give it back? Lav mishum darminin lahu kumu ahaduru. It must be because they hold, like Rabbi Eliezer, that you mechayiv the malva to pay back. But that's just Rabbi Nechem and Rabbi Eliezer and Yaakov. Clearly, they're arguing on the Tanakama. La mishum darminu lukumu adur mechlal the Tanakama is over. La b'nei adur ninu. So Zok to Gemara, you see here, there's a machlokes whether or not the malva beribis has to give back to ribis. And Rabbi Yochanan holds like the Shita that you don't have to give it back. Zok to Gemara, no. Loi, my kumase, it's not talking about where he already collected. And the bride says you don't get malchus because you have to give it back. No. Once you collected, you get malchus. You can't give it back. You can't fix that anymore. There's no mitzvah to give it back. Kumase there means before you collected, you just have a star. The fact that you locked into a transaction with the star to be mechayiv yourself to pay ribis, that's where the bride says you don't get malchus because there's a kumase to fix it. And what's the kumase? Likroy a star to tear up the star. And that'll be mevatel your shibud. Let's analyze this. Makasov. If you hold that a star creates a shibud, which means that the nechasim of the loiva are already meshubah to the malva, that's no different than actually having had already paid the ribbons. So if that's the case, so then they did the isur already of ribbons. So if you're going to say that there's a kumaseh to give it back, you do have a raya. You do have a raya that you're mechuyev to give it back. The ilav kagovidami, and if you hold the star is not kagovidami, it's just like a raya that you can collect with, well then halay. So nothing really happened. Just the mere fact that the star was written, that shouldn't even violate the isur of ribbis. Let's say the star is lav kagovidami, just like a raya commitment to pay the ribbis. But that is considered an aveir that you would get malchus for. The mere fact that we created this scenario where I'm mechuyev to pay, even though there's no shivud and I didn't pay yet, that's enough to violate the isur lav of ribbis. And I'll prove it to you that with merely a commitment, even though there's no actual transaction here where money changed hands, there is still an isur lav that you can get malchus for. We have a Mishnah that teaches us in this transaction of ribbis, who are the parties that were over the lav? Hamalva, that's obvious because he actually took the money. V'aloiva, that's obvious he gave the money. The Ha'arev who might have passed the money back and forth. But the Aedim, why would the Aedim get malchus? They didn't do anything. Everyone here in this cast did something. And the Aedim didn't do anything, they just witnessed it. So how come they're over? The mere fact that I'm involved in such a type of transaction is enough to violate the isur of ribbis. So too, the malva and the loiva, even though they didn't pay any money yet or receive any money yet, there's no ribbis paid yet, there's no shibud, just the fact that they entered into such a deal is enough to violate the isur of ribbis. Shmamina. Amar Rab Safra, a new sugya. Rab Safra is teaching us a new sugya, a litmus test. We said according to Rabbi Eliezer that only ribbis ktsutza you have to pay back. What is ribbis ktsutza? It's something where you're contractually obligated to pay the ribbis. The loiva is contractually obligated to pay the ribbis. So what is considered contractually obligated? Zokra Papa, I'm going to give you a good litmus test. I'm sorry, Reb Safra said I'm going to give you a good litmus test. Oh, Reb Safra. Kol she'ilu b'dineim moitziin miloiva l'malva. If this contract is clear enough that if they went to a secular court, the secular court would recognize that there's a commitment and would force the loiva to pay the malva the ribbis, b'dinenu, then we consider that ribbis ktsutza, and therefore machzirin mi malva loiva, you'll force the malva to pay back according to Rabbi Eliezer. And kol shilu b'dineim ein moitziin mi loiva l'malva, b'dinenu ein machzirin mi malva loiva. Frek Abaya, that's not a good list with this, because I'm going to show you cases where the secular court will enforce the deal, yet it's not considered ribbis harais. Is that a good test? Is that a good litmus test? We know that if I give you a saw of wheat, that you should pay me back in a couple of weeks. We're not allowed to do that midai. So why? Because it looks like ribbis, but it's not ribbis, and therefore you wouldn't have to pay back. But the bidinei might be malva. secular court would force the loiva to pay back the saw of wheat that he borrowed. Yet, yet, according to our Torah, where it's only their abundance, you wouldn't have to give it back. That's not a kasha. When I said the litmus test is would the secular courts enforce the payment from the levy to the malva, that's only if they would enforce it because they recognized there was a deal about ribis. They enforced the ribis charge. But the reason why they forced the levy to pay back the saw b'saw is because the secular courts don't view this as ribis. You know how they view it? Inu b'teris b'kodin asli yodei. They look at it like it's a pegodin, and you're giving back the pegodin. So they're not enforcing the contract based on that they're saying there's a legitimate contract to pay ribis. You lent them something, you got to give it back. And therefore, it doesn't impact the halachas of ribis. Amal Ravina Ravashi, okay, how about a different case? Mashkanta below nechiyais. Imagine a malva lends $100,000 to a loiva, and the loiva gives the malva his kerem, his wine garden, his vineyard, and he says, if I don't pay you back by a certain date, you get to keep it. Now, in between when he got it till when he can actually keep it, who's eating his pears? The malva eats the pears. Now, that is ribis derabbanan, because it's possible that the loiva will end up paying the money back. He'll get his kerem back, but in the meantime, the malva ate those pears. That would be ribis derabbanan. Now, what if the loiva decided that he's going to take pears from this field during that interim period? The secular courts will force the loiva to pay back the malva for the pears that he ate from his own field, because they consider that it's the malvas. So you see, they're enforcing the contract of ribis and forcing the loiva to pay the malva. So we only consider that they're abanon. Uvedinenu zokt the Heilige Gemara we're going to turn on to Tav Samach Beis Amud Beis. Uvedinenu ein machzirin mimalva loiva. Amar Leish, Rav Shabbos said that's also enforced not because they look at it like a commitment to pay ribis. Rather, inu b'toris vini also ledayu. They perceive it as if the malva purchased the field, and that's why the loiva has to pay the malva for any pears that he ate because it was the malva's field. So, frankly, Gemara. So then, what is your litmus test helping us? Every example we bring up, you say, is an exception. Where is there a case where they're actually enforcing it due to our ribis transaction? Exactly what case is he referring to? This is what he's referring to. Mind you, what's the case where they enforce it? For ribis ketutza, a very simple case where the contract says, I'm lending you $100 and you've got to pay me back $120. A textbook case of ribis. We're saying that in that case, we would force the malva to pay back. Why? Because he owed the Rabbi Lazar. And call she'ilu b'dineim ein moitziin, then b'dineinu ein machzirin. What are we talking about there? We're talking about ribis mukdemes and ribis mucheres, which is not contractually obliged to pay. What does this mean? Reuben wants to borrow a lot of money from Shimon, so he wants to butter him up. So he brings him a beautiful, beautiful present. He gives him a big cash envelope. And then the next day he says, could you do me a favor? Could you lend me money without ribis? So the ribis has been prepaid. Or on the other hand, someone borrowed money and he paid it back. And then after he paid it back, he brought him a big wad of cash to thank him for the loan. Again, that's not ribis ktsutzo because it wasn't part of the contract. But it's still asur b'drabanan. There, even though it's asur b'drabanan, you don't force the malva to pay it back. Because it's only b'drabanan. Gewaltig. Now we're getting to more of a complex sugya. And we're going to analyze the second case of the Mishnah where we said it's ribis derabbanan. And what was the case? Keita lagach heimenu chitin b'diner zov. A lekeach went to a moicher and said, I want to prepay at the beginning of the season to get a good rate. I'm going to give you $100,000 and I want you to supply me with chitin throughout the season. And then when he came to collect, the chitin has already went up in price. His $100,000 investment is already worth $120,000. He's now coming to pick up his wheat. The moicher says, you know what? and the Moicha says, you know why I want my wheat? Because I want to sell it for 120,000. And my next investment is I'm going to buy wine. Also, at the beginning of the season, get a good price, and I'll make money on the wine now. So the Moicha says, you know what? I have a good idea. How about I don't give you back your wheat, I don't give back money, but I will give you back $120,000 worth of wine. I don't have it here, but you'll have by me credit for $120,000 worth of wine. And when it goes up, you'll make even more money. So that is what the Mishnah says is not allowed. Frak the Gemara, why is it not allowed? So the merchant didn't have wine. Big deal. Why should that be a problem? Vatani, we looked at the Brisa. Ain't poiskin ala payers, ashar. You're not allowed to pay up in advance and buy the futures of the payers unless the public market price has already been established. Yota ashar, if the public market rate has already been established, even though the merchant that I'm buying it from and I'm giving him the $100,000 does not have product, but since it's so easy to buy product from somebody else, that's called derech mekach. We look at it like a purchase. It won't be a problem over this. So the problem here is, here it's just ashar on the wine. And just like it was mutter to do that with the chitin, why can't he roll that over with the yayin? Why is there a problem? What is the isser of our Mishnah? Amar Rabba, our Mishnah speaking masnisim bebalochu b'dmein askina. The first time around, when you're giving cash to the merchant, that's not a problem, even though he doesn't have it, because the price came out already. But the second time around, he's not paying for the wine in cash. He's paying for the wine with an outstanding loan. That's not allowed. Uchiditanya, like you find in the Brisa. Somebody owed his friend $1,000. Now the Malva comes to collect. The Malva comes to the granary, stocked full of grain, and he tells the Leiva, pay up, you owe me $100,000. You know why I want my cash? I want to buy wheat. The Leiva says, wheat? I have wheat. I owe you $100,000. I can give you $100,000 worth of wheat. Say like right now, you could buy a lot of wheat for $100,000, and even if it goes up, you're going to get your wheat based on today's low price. For the next 12 months, I'm going to give you wheat at the same rate as it is now, even though it's going to go up, and you're going to benefit. Zok the Brisa there, also that's also. You know why? The lav ki Israel. You didn't come with cash. You're only coming with a loan. That doesn't work. That's also to do midrabon. Amalei Abaya, I don't understand. Our case on our Mishnah is not so makmer as the Brisa, because either like Israel B'Yadoi, our Mishnah says the only time it's a problem is if he doesn't have the wine. But in the Brisa, even if he had the wheat, it's still going to be awesome. Afilu yesh le'nami, because the case was he went to the Geirin. He's full of wheat over there. Yet still the Brisa said it's awesome. Our Mishnah only said it's awesome if he doesn't have wine. Had he had the wine, it would have been mutter. So that Brisa is way more machmer than our Mishnah. Our Mishnah cannot be going according to that Brisa. So Zok to Gemara, El Amar Abaye, Zok to Abaye, I'll tell you which Brisa our Mishnah is similar to. Masnizin kedetani Rab Safra beribis levei Rab Chia. Rab Safra taught us about the ribis in the house of Rab Chia. What was that? Tani Rab Safra beribis levei Rab Chia as follows. Yesh devarim shein mutar. There are certain transactions that are meikar mutar, but they're also midrabanan v'asur mipnei aramas ribis. They're also because clearly it's a loophole where the people in the transaction are just trying to get around the prohibition of ribis. Ketzat. The Brisa gives us an example. Amar lo hilveni mana. Reuben goes to Shimon and tells Shimon, lend me a mana of money. Amar lo mana ainli. Now he knows if he wants the money and he wants to kind of pay back more than the mana, that'll be ribis. So he makes a trick to get around it. Mana ainli, I don't have cash, but you know what I can give you? Chitin b'mana yeshni. I do have wheat worth of mana. Shani naishalach. So I'm going to gift you a whole bunch of chitin, 10 bushels of chitin that are worth a mana, and they're yours. and you owe me a full money now. And then, and then, where do I make my money? As the Malva. And then I went and buy it from you for a discounted price. So let's say you wanted to borrow $100,000 from me. I gave you wheat that was worth $100,000, and right away you sell it back to me for $80,000. So now you still owe me $100,000, and I got a $20,000 discount on my wheat. So there's my ribbis, but it's not ribbis. It's really just buying something at a discount. So therefore, it's mutter, but the also lasses came mipnei haramas ribbis, because it looks like ribbis. So now, how in the world will that fit into our mission? So we're going to try to squeeze a round peg into a square hole and make this fit into our Mishnah, but it's not going to work. So Hakanami, you're going to have to say that our Mishnah, even though the Mishnah started the story with someone going to a vendor to buy wheat, that's not how the story started. That's the middle of the story. The story started earlier. Going to Amar Helvenu Shloshim Dinar. A loiva went to a Malv and said, "I want to borrow $100,000." Amalei Shloshim Dinar mainly. I don't have $100,000. But I have chitin b'shloishim dinarim. I have $100,000 worth of wheat. Yeshli, I have. Shani neishalach. So here is wheat. You owe me now $100,000. Nozel like chitin b'shloishim dinarim. Then v'chazav v'lacham amenu b'dinazov. Then I buy back that wheat from you for $80,000. So I already made my profit, and you still owe me the $100,000 from the wheat that I gave you earlier. Zok to Gemara. Is lechamer l'loiv. If the loiva actually has wine in stock, the yoyev lei b'shloishim dinner that he can give him to pay him for what he owes him for the original purchase of the wheat. So the Gemara using shloishim dinner, I'm using $100,000. I gave you wheat. Ultimately, that's all I handed to you is wheat, and you're giving back wine. There's no problem of ribbis for less. But the Eloi, but if you don't have the wine there, so you're ultimately going to give me money. So now it doesn't look good, because it looks like I gave you money. I gave you $80,000 when I bought the wheat back, and now you're giving me $100,000. It looks like a money transaction. It looks like ribbis. So therefore, the Eloi, if you don't have wine, given the less lechamra vadai mishkel zuziminei, you're taking money back and forth, and michsik your ribbis, it looks like ribbis. Amalei Rava. Rava says, you know, Abaya, your pshat does not fit at all into the Mishnah, because none of the words in the Mishnah correspond with how you want to learn what happened. For instance, it says in the Mishnah, Iachi, it says, Tein li chiti. The Mishnah says that the purchaser came and said, I want to take delivery of my chitin, wants the chitin went up. But the way you're describing the story about it, this whole thing was a loan. So it's the mei chitin in boiler. He just wanted the $100,000, which was the original sale price when he sold the chitin to the loiva. So Zok Gemara, you're right. Tani de mechiti. So we'll change the Mishnah a little bit. So Zok Rava, but there's another problem. Shani roitzel moichron. I want to sell them. Give me my wheat because I want to sell them. That's not what he's looking for. He's looking for money to pay for the wheat that he originally gave the loiva. Shemachatim loch mi boile. So Zok Gemara, okay, we'll squeeze that too. Tani shemachatim loch. So for another thing doesn't make sense. The Mishnah says at this point the moicher tells the lokeach, the chitin that you bought from me, now I'm going to say it's worth 30 dinarim, and now I'm going to owe you that much. Isn't that what the original purchase price was when the Malva gave that to the loiva? Okay, we can fetch that too. I'll give you wine up to the original value of the shloshim dinner that you originally gave me the wheat for. Then it says, Harei loch etli bahen yayin, v'yayin ein loy. You can take it in wine. That's what the Moicher said, but he happens not to have wine. What do you mean? V'bediner zov hakur v'chein hashar katon. It says in the Mishnah that it was purchased originally with a dinner zov, and that was the price. So it didn't go up per carat. It stayed at 30, and you just bought it back for less. So what does it mean? Is if it went up in value, it didn't go up in value. So because of that, Dr. Rabba, I reject this pshat. I'm going to tell you pshat. Pshat is going to be parallel to a brisa that Rabbi Oshia quoted. And since Rava always found legitimacy and support for brises that Rabbi Oshia quoted, Rava said, Kishachivna Rabbi Oshia, Kishachivna Kama, when I die, Rabbi Oshia Nofak Lavosi. Rabbi Oshia is going to come greet me. Why? Because I always support him turning on to Samach Gimel Amar Aleph. The Metaratzdom Asnizin Kabaseh. And now the Gemara is going to come up with a brisa that is parallel to our Mishnah. And just to give you a sneak preview of what we're going to learn tomorrow, is really this brisa is similar to the original brisa that we brought. The only difference is the original brisa that we brought said that it's going to be usher to do this transaction, even though he had chitin in stock. It was by the Geir. And this brisa is going to say that if the chitin were in stock, it wouldn't be usher. It's only usher if the chitin are not in stock, which would be parallel to our Mishnah. But Ezra Shem Yisborach, we'll see that tomorrow. I want to wish everybody a good tavach. These were two challenging blätter. Baruch Hashem, we go through them. Now that we're in between Pesach and Sukkot, Pesach and Shavuos, where we're preparing for Kabbalah Satorah, we'll harav it through these beautiful blätter B'zeu Neshach, and that will be the Siyata D'Shmaya for us to prepare for Kabbalah Satorah. A good tavach, a good kibbutz